everybody. Good evening and welcome to Just Saying episode 23. And you'll see it's just me on my own here. It's been a calamitous day for the Just Saying podcast panel and guests. I was supposed to have with me Bromeo, S. Falcon, and Skill Steel. I lost Falcon and the Bromeo to extended load shedding, and Skill Steel had domestic things to take care of. He was on dinner duty, so he couldn't make it. So you're just stuck with me tonight, which is why the panel over here is looking a little lonely. Just little old me here. So hello and welcome, everybody. You can see the schedule or the topics we're going to be going over just to that side of me. And we'll get to that in a second. But I guess it would not be proper to start without talking about what happened in Europe last night and the run that GK had and their 12-0 drubbing of the entire championship Sunday field to... I think they had like a 3.5% chance of qualifying for the major. They had to win the entire thing to qualify, and they pulled it off. And probably one of the best runs you'll ever see in a Rocket League tournament. It was astonishingly good. All right, so let's get on to the topic for tonight. It's been a wild weekend, and I spent most of the weekend being a little angry and a little frustrated. Angry at load shedding and the impact that had on the quals. It certainly impacted players like Minoto and who was the other team on Saturday that got impacted by load shedding, and they crashed out of quals without making top 32. And then yesterday, Nitro, Dukla's team, Tristan's team, whose name I forget, Mama Lapos. They crashed out because of load shedding, and BTB crashed out because of load shedding, and they were 2-up against WRG when they lost a player. So incredibly frustrating. So that was one point of frustration and anger, and the other was the first topic tonight, which was more European cheaters. And we have to give a shout out to Harmonic, who was quite instrumental in bringing this to light and the consequences that rolled out as a result of that. If I bring up the bracket, so this was the bracket, the double elimination bracket on Saturday. I'll make that a little bit more bigger. And you will see a team by the name of Mustard over here. Their first series against Zave Esports, which is a European team, so it doesn't hurt me that much that they 3-0'd that team. And then they went on in the next round. They sent White Rabbit Gaming down to the lower bracket. And then suspicions were being raised, and it was raised on my watch party stream, and I started talking about it, and it was being spoken about on the Death Cloud stream, the White Rabbit Gaming stream, and suddenly they lost to Death Cloud Esports. And I don't want to underplay here Death Cloud's performance because they played really well. But it was just kind of suspicious that they had swept their way up to that point and then got swept out, not winning a single game. So being bundled down to the lower bracket and then beating another EU team called 60 Hertz, sweeping them, and then sweeping Jackals in the qualification round. And by that time, all the information was sent through to the admins. And this was the crux of the cheating scandal. Is Mustard was made up of 3 players, and those 3 players, their names were Got them here. Strawberry, Krosky, and Mamba Bam-Man. I don't know if it was supposed to be Mamba Man or Mama Bam-Man. Whatever, the name doesn't matter. And what this was 3 perma-banned players who had been DDoSing in Europe and whose main accounts were perma-banned. They then bought 3 accounts, alt accounts, new accounts, and then came to play SSA Rocket League. And if you followed the trackers of those accounts, they were all sort of GC1, GC2, and there they were, sweeping their way through the qualifiers. All that information was sent to the admins. The admins escalated it up to Blast and to Epic. And a huge, huge W to our admins and to Blast and Epic is that they were DQ'd and rebanned. 3 Spanish players. The ringleader is a guy by the name of Ferg M. And I don't know if I'm saying that right, FERGM. And instead of taking any accountability, his response to all of this was to message Harmonic and say, why are you getting involved with something that's got nothing to do with you? If it was hurting you, I could understand, but just leave us alone. So I wanted to bring that. I brought it up on my stream yesterday in the watch party. I want to bring it up again now and just call them out that they are cheaters. And to the Spanish community, they don't reflect well on you. And but I know you've done what you can to expose it. And I'm sorry you have to deal with this. And to the broader EU community, I think you already know the sort of character of these people. But now, if you didn't before, you know now. These are not good people. So there you go. And as I'm talking about it now, I'm getting angrier and angrier. And I think I'm going to move on to the next topic before I say something I might regret. But yeah, there you go. So once again, there are a minority of EU people trying to take advantage and I don't understand the mentality. I mean, they can't be doing it for glory because they can't say who they are. So they can't get glory that way. So it must be just for the money. I don't understand. I don't know what goes through the mind of these people that they think this is a smart thing to do. But yeah, there we go. That's my thought on that. And I wanted to bring it up and raise it once again. Then the top 32. So a weekend of qualifying. We started with 89 teams on Saturday, competing in the double elimination. 32 of those, no, I beg your pardon, 24 of those made it through to the Swiss round on Sunday. An additional 8 teams were auto-qualified, the top 8 from regional number 2. And I think if we go here, I can move along to... There we go. These are the Swiss brackets from yesterday. And this was Swiss Group A. And I mean, I think, listen, it was pretty rough. I think, oh, well, let me go to my tweet. So this is the tweet I did yesterday. So SSA is now pretty much a 1/3 region, which means 1/3 of the pool, the players playing in the RLCS for SSA are actually SSA. 43% of the signups were SSA. 31.25% of the top 32 were SSA players, SSA teams. And 31.25% of the final 16 are SSA teams. So it's effectively 1/3, which is a pretty dire state of affairs, and we all knew this when the season started. So it's a pretty scuffed season for us. But there are some bright rays of light, and we will talk more. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go. But it's not great. But what does that mean for top 32? It means So what were the big results? So the Maestros, as expected, kind of made their way through, although the Maestros were not top seeds by the end of Swiss. The top seeds, no, that can't. I don't know how the Buchholz thing works, but the Maestros finished seeded 2 at the end. They finished second in the Swiss group. Le Bosch, who were 9-3 in games, were seated at the very, very top. But the big surprise in round one of Swiss Group A was Hey with Riz lost to Chris Colon 3-2. And, Hey Riz, we know how strong they are. And now Hey with Riz, another Spanish roster. And from what I understand, they're not they don't take this overly seriously. I don't think any of them are grinding particularly hard. They kind of just show up and play their games. They are clearly very good players, but they lost their first round match. But they quickly fixed that, because then in round 2, they beat Omen Esports 3-1. In round 3, they beat Trifecta 3-1. And then in round 4, they swept Highball to go through to the top 16 this coming Friday. Finishing third was Chris Colon, another pretty good team. They had a relatively clean run, losing only to... Who did they lose to? Oh, they lost to Le Bosch in a game 5. And then Death Cloud Esports finishing 5th in Swiss. And they did pretty well. They were in the lower half of Swiss, but they were swept by Le Bosch, and then swept Ruth Regime, who knows who they are, and then beat Crazy Time. Now, Crazy Time is the EU team I love to hate the most. And then in the last round, for them, they beat 77 blocks, and that was a great result and really, really well done. So huge congrats to Death Cloud Esports making their first top 16. Eli Struddick and Jeff, awesome stuff. Congrats, and can't wait to see you guys in action on Friday. And definitely one of the rays of light in what is a fairly overshadowed SSA season. So once again, congrats to them. And then Highball, another bright ray of sunshine. Devour, Ravi, and the uncle, Skill Steel himself. They came out swinging in Swiss in the opening round, beating Crazy Time 3-2, and then in their second round, beating Trifecta 3-1. But when you win twice in Swiss, the competition gets harder and harder. So in round 3, they found themselves up against the Maestros, and I thought acquitted themselves really, really well. There was an overtime. They could have pipped at least a game, and I know they would have felt that they could have at least taken 1 or 2 games, but not to be. They went down in a sweep, and then in the third round went down to Hey Riz. So facing 2 of the very, very top teams in the entire competition, going down to those. But then in round 3, as expected, it was SSA on SSA violence, and Highball swept the Jackals. And the Jackals, a bit of a pickup roster with Olympic, Dylan, and my brain's going to let me down as to who the third was on Jackal. Someone in chat help me out there. It was Olympic, Dylan, and they had a pretty good run up until round 5 of Swiss. Not happy, of course. Not happy, or happy, whatever you want to call him. I think they acquitted themselves well, but not making it through to top 16. And we'll talk about Olympic a little bit in a moment, because he might be retiring. So that was Group A. So the 8 teams going through from Group A Swiss is Le Bosch, Maestros, Chris Colon, Hayworth Riz, Death Cloud Esports, 77 Blocks, Highball, and Ball Eater. And for those astute observers out there, Death Cloud and Highball, the only SSA teams And in Group B, Swiss was kind of interesting. Limitless losing their first series this entire season outside of the grand finals. And so I think having a bit of an off night, because I mean they dropped a game to Bulletproof. Okay, fair play. It's round one. It's not the end of the world. But then moving over to into the second round, they came up against 1-2-3, and 1-2-3. It was a very tight, very close series, but dropping that series 2-3 in game 5, and for the first time having to go into round 3 in the 1-1 bracket. And then they came up against Property in Egypt, whoever they are, and swept them 3-0, and then 3-1 to Cosmico, SSA on SSA violence. And so unusually for Limitless, going through to the top 16, but in round 4 of Swiss. Hello, Flossie. Good to see you here. You all good? And then Cosmico. And we're going to be talking, well, not in depth about Cosmico, but obviously there was a bit of a roster shakeup with Guns going out and Happy Meal having to come in to replace him, but doing exceptionally well, losing to the Broaders in round 1, the EU team, but in a game 5 thriller, then sweeping Galactica, and then beating Insanity, a very good EU team, 3-2 in round 3. And then round 4, coming up against Limitless, going down there 1-3. And then in the final round, which was interrupted because the Rocket League servers all fell over as round 5 was supposed to start. And so that was a little awkward and frustrating, but Cosmico making quick work of the Celestial Vanguards, knocking them out. And I think this is the first time Celestial Vanguards don't make top 16, if I am not mistaken. Which means the 8 teams going through to Friday night from Group B are Team Boney, Astronic, Astronic, by the way, making their first main event this season, Limitless, Bulletproof, Genesix, Cosmico, Insanity, and Mustu Fluck. And again, the astute among you will observe that only 3 SSA teams in that list of 8 teams, and 2 from the other group, so a total of 5. Only 5 SSA teams in the top 16, which is a little bit frustrating. And I guess the disappointments are White Rabbits struggling still, haven't made a main event at all this season. Pony no Jutsu not making it through at all, which they made main event last regional, not this time round. And then Decimate or Relentless didn't make a single main event this entire split, which is frustrating for them. And for the first time in the top 16, no reunion representation. And that's a little frustrating. We have so many good reunion players, and Rocket League is so big in the reunion island. And I'm not sure what has to be done to what reunion needs to do to take that next step up, because we've kind of waited from the start of SSA RLCS for there to be a huge breakthrough reunion team. I mean, we've had individual players like Wheelu, of course, who went to Worlds with French class in 2023, and Tishao and Eagle and Willant, individually all great players, but just not making that next jump. And I'm not sure what has to be done to make it happen, but I hope we will see it soon. So that has been the top 32. So let's see how it looks for main event and the first round matches. Hello, Syntax. Now, for those unfamiliar, and Dogman, I did see at the very end of my stream yesterday, you asked what GSL was, and I'll give a brief explanation of it now so everyone remembers what GSL is. So GSL is almost like a mini Swiss, and GSL stands for Global StarCraft League, and it's called that because it was first devised by and used in the StarCraft League, and it's like a mini Swiss where teams have to win. In Swiss, you have to win 3 series and then you qualify, or lose three series and you're eliminated. With GSL, you have to win 2 series and you qualify. And if you lose 2 series, you are out. So it's a smaller version of Swiss, which is an oversimplification, but there you go. And what that means, so the 16 teams that are playing main event on Friday are divided into 2 groups of 8, and they play this GSL bracket. And this is what it looks like. Oh, that was funny. I said, this is what it looks like, and then there was nothing there. So here are this is Group A. I think we can make that even bigger. There we go. And these will be the first round matchups. La Bosch will play Mustufluk. Bulletproof will play Death Cloud Esports. Astronic will play Highball. And Chris Colon will play Cosmico. Those are the first round matchups in the upper quarterfinals. And hello, Jay. So La Bosch and Mustufluk, don't really care about it, but I think La Bosch prevails. Mustufluk have had a very so-so regional or so-so split so far. Bulletproof Death Cloud Esports, tough matchup. But man, Eli, Jeff, Strudick, I think you guys can do this. And I am going to back you guys to take that and move through to the upper bracket semifinals for a showdown with Mustufluk and or La Bosch. And then Astronic Highball. I absolutely think Highball are the favorites in that matchup. Astronic making their first main event this entire season. Highball have made every single main event. So yeah, I mean, there's quite a few of the Death Cloud Esport chaps in the chat. So your thoughts about this matchup, guys? What do you think we're going to do? So Jay is doing what he must, which is talking up his team of Astronic. But I think even you have to admit, Jay, you are not the favorites going into that matchup. And then Chris Colon versus Cosmico. And also a tough matchup. Chris Colon have done very, very well, but absolutely beatable. And I do believe Cosmico can prevail there. And that then means there would probably be a Highball Cosmico matchup in the upper semifinals. And SSA on SSA violence is always unfortunate, but what you gonna do? And yeah, so that's in Group A. In Group B, Team Boney versus Ball Eater, 2 EU teams, and honestly, who cares? Hey with Riz and Genesix, tough matchup, but so Genesix was slightly impacted by. Oh God, we didn't really talk about Genesix in the Swiss. They got out of Swiss in round 4, which is amazing. Normally Genesix like to make us sweat until round 5. But they did very well, and they've been rewarded with a opening match against Hayworth Riz. But seeing them, Daps didn't play the first series. Their sub Drew was in there, but then his power came back on, and I thought they looked like a really good team. And importantly, they were getting leads and not then choking it. And going 2 games up and then giving it up. They were closing out series early. And that was really good to see. So, to me, looking the best they have all season. So I'm going to back them to take Hayworth Riz. Maestros will play Insanity. 2 good EU teams. Who cares? And then Limitless against 77 blocks. Limitless should clear them fairly easily. But that does then mean that once again, we're going to see the Maestros and Limitless early. And I think the last time they met earlier, it was in the upper bracket final. So it was really just about seeding. But we're going to see one of these two teams in the lower bracket for the very, very first time, which is kind of weird and awkward. Hello, Daps. Good to see you. I was just talking about you, Daps. And thanks for not pushing us to the limit. Normally you test the strength of my nerves a lot. The first split is about to end. This weekend is the final main event of the split. So from the end of Sunday, it'll be 6 weeks until the next SSA RLCS event. So we're going to be in a long break. And what traditionally happens at the end of any split is rosters kind of break up. People review their options. And it's something that isn't... Sometimes I think rosters break up too early. They don't give it a long enough run, but it's always to be expected. And there are a number of LFT tweets that have gone out. So I thought that we would have a squiz at them and see who is LFT for split number 2. And first up on that list is going to be Star. Star and Zany, I guess technically they're LF1. Willu has left the roster, the former Decimate roster. They ended the season as Relentless. And so Zany and Star, by the look of it, are going to stick together and will be looking for a third. I don't know. I mean, obviously they've got in mind who they might like, but if you think you want to be part of that roster, maybe get in touch with them. And then next up is Six, who is LFT for split 2. Reposts appreciated. So Six, who was with? I'm going to struggle now to remember which team he was on. Six, if you're here or someone who remembers which team Six is on, please do let me know. And then next up, okay, well, this is not LFT, but Olympic, playing Rocket League off his car battery, the load shedding woes. Now, I don't know if he just reposted his old picture or if this was a new one, but he apparently played off his car battery yesterday. Yeah, you are right, Daps, and I'm Omen Esports. You are quite right. Thank you, Rumble Truck. Bird also have had a very disappointing split. They went out. They didn't even make, did Bird even make top 32? They did not. So yeah, just a struggle, just not happening for them, Daps. And then Willu. Obviously Willu is LFT after leaving the Relentless roster. And then Olympic claims that he has retired. Is this an SSA retirement or is he done and dusted? He hasn't done the old twit longer to explain where he's going or what he's going to be doing with his life now. But he has said that this was his last. It was his last run in RLCS. So we'll see if that holds. Kexi is looking for trifecta. So he's LFT, and then Dilly from the aforementioned Olympic team is LFT for split 2. And then Eagle has left Pony no Jutsu, which I'm a little frustrated with. I'm not sure why, but Eagle, great player, and I hope he finds a banger roster to be on. And that's going to wrap it up there. So Jeff, I don't know if you can remember when you were last on this podcast. It feels like it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, something like that. I think we were talking about imports then, were we? I don't actually remember.
No, I think it might even have been pre-imports. I think we were just talking about we were just generally, because I wanted to get some input on what it was like to own an org, what it takes to build a roster. So there was in the glory days when it was like all SSA all the time in the region.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense now. It's all coming back to me. Yeah, it's a lot has changed since then. Blooming hell.
um, well, why don't well let's start off because I think there's definitely some people in chat who will know who you are and know a bit of the pedigree of Resolve. But give us the broad overview of Resolve, who you are, what you're about, and your association with Rocket League.
Yeah, so Resolve have been in Rocket League for for about 3 seasons. We're not currently in Rocket League, I should add. But yeah, in European Rocket League for a couple of years now, we have had various different teams, some really good players. Amongst that, our last season was our kind of most successful season with the sort of Ivan Cash Reserves roster. Reserves obviously now playing in OCE this season. Yeah, been around for a few years. Before that, I used to run a team called Barrage, and was in Rocket League as well then. And we had a roster of Rise, Oli, Cynical back on Barrage back many years ago. So yeah, been around Rocket League for a good number of years on 2 different orgs, and then also had the pleasure of managing the England Rocket League team at the FIFA E World Cup in the winter. I was going to say in the summer, but yeah, it was in December. So yeah, and then just kind of sat on the sidelines at the minute, just waiting for things to fall into place. So yeah, just a fan for the time being.
That is amazing. I didn't know that you managed the English team. That was pretty epic. So did you were you there physically there?
Yeah, I flew out to Saudi Arabia with the team. Yeah.
That's incredible. And so how long were you there?
Just over a week. I think it was like 8 days in the end. So yeah, it was really cool. Really cool event. It's obviously the first one, so there was always going to be like some little nitpicky bits, but actually really enjoyed it. The result wasn't great for us. We didn't necessarily perform that well, but the actual event was really cool. Yeah, and it was my first time in Saudi Arabia as well, so that was interesting. And obviously, there's been a bunch of events there over the last couple of years with Gamers 8 and Esports World Cup, but yeah, it was my first time, so that was it was all new.
Now, I don't know. I mean, you've said quite a bit on, well, in various places on Reddit, on Twitter, and I think you've probably been on a podcast or two talking about. I mean, you chose not to be in Rocket League this season, and so your thoughts around that. I mean, that was from what I've read, it was very much a business decision, and where does that stand, and where do you think it goes?
Yeah, so I think our decision to not be in Rocket League this season was just it was majoritively a business decision. It's not because we don't love Rocket League, because we do. Um, Unfortunately, just the changes that made it not viable to be sustainable in any way, shape, or form for any teams kind of outside of those major teams, and that's why we're seeing so few orgs, generally across the board in any of the regions, because if you're not making majors, it's not really financially sustainable. I would argue even if you are, it isn't. um Obviously, a lot has changed in terms of there's no longer a direct rev share for sales of decals, so teams don't earn cut of that revenue any longer. It's a license fee basically that Epic pay the teams to put their I guess their logos and stuff in game, which is better and worse depending on who you speak to. It's better for some teams, it's worse for others. Um, yeah, a lot of changes. Obviously, the big one for us, really, the kind of killer for us was the removal of the sponsors from decals. Having that as a marketing, something that we could sell to potential sponsors was a huge one for us. It was the majority of our revenue related to Rocket League the season before. So yeah, those things combined just kind of made it not viable to stay in Rocket League this season. That being said, I don't know how much of that is going to change. I think there certainly needs to be more support for teams, in the top 16. We've kind of gone from we were crying out for bubble teams having support, those top 32 teams, having more support for them. And now there's most of the top 16 teams can't afford to do Rocket League for a living. So we have definitely regressed. I'm hearing some rumblings of some things that are going to be announced this year that are quite exciting. How much that affects the esport, I don't know, but hopefully gives a bit of life to the game again. And I think, to be fair, the actual game, there has been some positive changes this last 12 months. I think it's mainly the esports changes that have been progressively worse over the last sort of 24 months, really.
Well, I mean, Blast is now what are we two and a half splits into a what I think it was a 3-year deal, 4-year deal. So hopefully the period of recalibration that a lot of us like to refer to is going to come to an end, and there will and we'll start to see the upswing. So we remain incredibly hopeful about that. And what are your thoughts? I mean, you talk about rumblings, and certainly there are rumblings. I've heard a couple of things which, if they come to pass, are going to be very good for us. I've also heard rumblings about the game itself, and I don't know. I don't know if you've given it any thought, Jeff, but it is the 10th anniversary of Rocket League this year, and it was a topic on the podcast last week, and we all just sort of threw out our little fantasies there of what it might mean if they will indeed do anything to celebrate the 10th anniversary. But in as much as you've thought about it, what do you think comes to mark this great occasion?
I mean, I think the rumor that's being touted, isn't it, is around Unreal Engine 5. I know that's been I know this has been a hot potato now for like 2 or 3 years. So
Yes.
hopefully we'll finally see something this year around that, because we are falling a little bit behind. But I've also heard that, with Unreal Engine 5, do we just become part of Fortnite and you can only access Rocket League via Fortnite and all sorts of things. So like nobody really knows for sure what it's going to look like. But I think, I mean, how much does it actually change the game? I don't really know. I'm sure it allows a lot
If
more
y'all don't follow
creativity and a lot more
Graybeard,
freedom
you
for
need to
people
get
to
in there.
create stuff in game if we go to Unreal Engine 5. But how much it actually influences the game itself, other than making it look, look nicer. How much does it impact the game? I'm not sure. But yeah, we'll see. I think it's it's a positive, right? If we allow the to be more creation, by the community, look at all the things that get created in Fortnite now. If we have some of those possibilities for Rocket League, who knows what we'll see. But yeah, I think that's the big thing that everybody kind of wants to see this year. But who knows?
Who knows? Indeed, there's a lot of us who sit here and hope. I mean, you guys have taken a step back, but there's people like myself and lots of people who've invested a lot into Rocket League who are really hopeful and probably breathing a lot of copium that it's going to work out. And I think the advantage for SSA, I think, outside of RLCS, which is a bit crazy right now, and it's kind of scuffed with the region issue. But in terms of Rocket League on the ground, there is so much more that we can do because we were isolated for so long. There is so much that we can build locally for the broader base, not the small percentage of people who compete. That I think that's what I'm excited about, because there's a lot to do. There's a lot to keep us busy for another 2 or 3 years before we hit a ceiling there and then go, well, if the game's dead by then it's dead. So I'm going, okay, I'm giving this 3 years to sort itself out, but we'll see how it goes in the long term. Okay, Jeff. So I've sort of taken you around, and now to the topic of why we're here tonight. And I see Syntax is in chat and Guns is in chat, and so the second best team in the region, Cosmico, were in a position where they took a decision to suspend a player from the roster because of some sort of um, uh, out of competition toxicity. There was chats, and they took that decision. And like with any decision like this, there's two sides to the story, and each side is kind of litigating why they're kind of in the right. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is not, I actually don't want to litigate that specific circumstance, because I don't think there's any value in doing that in a public forum. But it was a huge decision for Cosmico to take, and obviously that impacts Guns as a player. And to me, it brought up the question around professionalism. And funnily enough, I'm remembering now, that was part of the topics we spoke about when I had you on here like 2.5 years ago, because we have such a young player base, and the competitors are, I mean, the age is like now 13, you can play RLCS. So very, very young people, 13 to sort of 18, 19, you're going through a period of a lot of angst, a lot of who am I in this world, trying to find your way. And then being thrust into what is a professional environment can be a little daunting. And then on the other side, people who are starting orgs, a number of people who start orgs are themselves very young, 17, 18, hey, let's start an org, and people with a lot of maturing to do in life. And so I thought, given that circumstance, it was a catalyst to have a conversation about how is this approached. So my opening question to you around this is, what has been your experience in managing young people in that quote unquote professional scene, who are young and who are prone to sort of go off on tangents, who are prone to do stupid and silly things? What are the lessons you learned? And then ultimately we're going to work our way to what is your expectation as an org when you're signing and managing players?
Yeah, I think you pointed out some really good things there. So, firstly, especially in Rocket League, unlike most of the games, we have such a young group of professional players, right? As you say, the age limit for Rocket League now being 13 is wild for starters. I don't necessarily agree with that either. I think it causes some interesting challenges for teams, not just because of not just from a professionalism standpoint, these young people having to effectively teach them how to be in the public eye and be professionals, but also like from a safeguarding perspective from organizations. You mentioned young people starting their own organizations, bedroom orgs, and that's something that we don't necessarily think about enough, is how we safeguard these young people whilst they're online, whilst they're playing. They are in the spotlight, and how do we help them to deal with that? I think it's a fine line as well between being professional and having a personality and being allowed to, have a bit of banter on socials and stuff. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. I think it's important for players to be able to express themselves and to be able to have a personality on social media and be themselves. I think it's about that not falling over the line, I guess, and not becoming toxicity and whatever else. So yeah, it's incredibly difficult with how young the players are, but as well, if you are a professional, you are a professional athlete signed to an esports team, you're getting paid to do that job. You have to be professional. You have to be a role model for the rest of the community, right? Especially, I would say, especially so in in the SSA region, where there are very few pros at the top level, and you've got all these other regions talent coming over to try and steal major spots, etc. I think that the top pros have to be at the top of their game, both on and off, in and out of the game. It's more than just playing Rocket League now. If you want this to be a career, you have to be professional, and you have to be you have to be someone that the orgs can trust, because if if you can't be trusted to not go and run your mouth and call people this and that and do stupid things, then it's not going to be a very lengthy career. I guess is the take home.
And where is the? Because I'm trying to think of it from the view of a 15-year-old who goes, I'm pretty good at this game, and then looks to get signed, and then does get signed, and I don't know uh, from an advice point of view, because with bigger established orgs, because I can imagine with Resolve there, if you're signing a fresh guy, and the rosters that I've seen you have seem to be players that have been around for a while. They've had some experience and probably learned some lessons, but you're picking up a 15-year-old who hasn't really been part of anything yet. I mean, I imagine you have some kind of onboarding, but for a kid who's not, I'm trying to think, how do they even start to learn about what's expected of them? Because the only examples they have is what happens in six mans and the other interactions with their own peers, which is not necessarily a great source of education for how
Yeah.
you approach the world. And that's what, because I go, well, what would we even do to help in that sort of circumstance?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's on the orgs as well. I don't think from an organizational perspective you can blame the players if when you sign the players you don't do anything with them to onboard them. Um, I think there has to be expectations that are set out at the start of of anything that you do. As you say, for us at Resolve, we have a very clear like sort of sit down. Right, this is what you do and don't do on socials. We want, as I say, we want players to have a personality and be able to, talk about the things that they want to talk about. But they have to know where the line is. I suppose is the best way of saying it. We do that with all of our players, regardless of what game it's been in. We've been in multiple different esports now: Fortnite, League of Legends, Rocket League, and all the players get the same sort of introduction to the org. And obviously, you said we've had more experienced players, and definitely more recently we have. Certainly this last season we had very experienced players that are not the type that are going to cause us issues on social media and stuff. But looking back 2 seasons ago, we had a very young roster with Size and Prime, Radisson, and that wasn't issue free by any stretch of the imagination. And more recently, even with Noah Saki was only 17 when we signed him, 16, 17. So they're still young players. They're not adults. So
Mm.
their frustrations bubble over. The they're young, adolescents, and sometimes those things are gonna result in them saying stupid stuff. We've all been there. It's
Mm.
about how we manage that and how we educate them as well. I'm very much not someone who's like, oh, the first thing that you do, that's it, you're done, you're out the door. Within reason. We have to educate these people, young players as well. It can't just be oh, that's it, you're done. We have to be able to say like, this is wrong, this is why. And I think it's on orgs as well as it is on individual players. Obviously that's when they're signed to a team, and they have a professional team that knows what they're doing and knows how to look after players. It's there are a lot of bedroom orgs that won't be doing those sorts of things, but those are the sorts of things you need to be able to develop, because you can't blame players if you didn't ever set out sort of the
Mm.
framework, the guidelines kind of thing. So yeah.
For you, where you've alluded to the line. So where does personality cross a line?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, certain players have different personalities, right? I'm trying to think of a standout one in Rocket League that's kind of like the bad boy of Rocket League, which we don't really have. You look at like, I guess the line is like Zen, Monkey Moon. If you look at them in ranked and stuff, they give their opponents some grief. They're quick chatting. They are they are bantering, etc. But they never quite cross that line for me into what is abusive, toxicity, and maybe they do, and I don't see it. But I think the line is, uh, I think the obvious one is no homophobia, no racism, nothing like that. But also, I think excessive abusive behavior is too much as well. I would say there's always room for banter, and I think sometimes that helps create storylines. When one team is bantering with another, and we've even done that with other organisations, right? Us and Endpoint did it a little bit last season, and it can be done in a professional way. That's light-hearted, and both sides are on board. I think when it becomes there's a line that you step over where it becomes less banter and more just abuse. I would say.
So, I mean, it's a hard thing to exactly quantify, because when you say there's a line. There's the
Yeah,
obvious things, and you've mentioned them. I mean, if you're openly racist and homophobic, that's easy. That's an easy one to put to pen into the rules. But then there is also, uh, I guess, discretion that has to be, and some thought put into it. So if there is a complaint from other players, or someone approaches you as the org owner and says, "Hey, listen, your player was doing the following," there's obviously some conversation around that and what was going on there, and then also I think there's, if you've had a player been around with you for a year and there's a complaint out of the blue, that's one thing. If this is the 14th complaint, perhaps that certainly impacts the direction of the conversation.
yeah, of course, and that's what we talked about. That's why I talk about education is important. If you get a complaint from another team that, oh, so and so was saying this in scrims and they were just being abusive, they weren't taking it seriously, like, or they were doing this, that, and the other, you can have the conversation with them and sort of say, right, look, that's not acceptable. This is how we want these things to happen. And yeah, it's entirely dependent on how long they've been with the team, how many complaints they've had, whether they're making the same mistakes repeatedly, I guess. And I think that's the same in any walk of life, any job, any role kind of thing, outside of esports entirely. If you do something wrong, you get educated and you continue to do that thing wrong, then you should be punished for that. Esports athletes shouldn't be exempt from the rules of everyday existence, I suppose, and every other job. So yeah, I think that is the thing as well, right? These young players don't treat this as a job. And if you're getting paid to do something, it is, like professional footballers, professional athletes. That's where esports athletes fall. So I think they need to take that seriously and realize that what they say online and how they act in scrims or in six mans or on ranked can have a negative effect on their job.
Now, I'm going to just interject here and say, because Guns has said in chat that he feels targeted, and I think it's important to say that I understand why you feel that way, and it's the most public and recent example in our region. But make no mistake, this isn't about Guns. As being a community figure in SSA, I get messages fairly frequently of people complaining about other players, and this happened in ranked, and I get sent screen grabs, and so and those don't necessarily go public, and don't necessarily involve other orgs, but certainly this is not a Guns Cosmico situation. This is I guess it's just a recent example of something that does go on. So this is definitely not a Guns conversation. And which does then bring me to what is the authority and or rights of the org? I mean, do orgs, should they and do they have like the ultimate, like a Like when you get fired from a job, there are some countries where there's no cause firing, and there's others where there are some places where I can fire you just because you irritated me this morning, or I don't need a reason. I can just get rid of you. But in other countries, there's process. It's hard to get rid of people. What should the what should the rights of the org be to just summarily get rid of players?
Yeah, I think, and this is where I'll say to players, make sure you read your contracts, right? Um, we talk about this a lot, and I'm sure other orgs are like, "Don't tell them that. We want to be exploitative or whatever." But I think our contracts have always been pretty fair. We have kind of a warning system, unless it's something like that is grossly, over the line. If
Mm,
somebody was on one of our players was on Twitter or whatever other social, saying racist things, then I think there's a line, right? um Again, this this
mm,
this line, I think that things that, and I'm sure some lawyer has written it in our contract that that defines it far better than I can. But I would say where it's grossly offensive, like that's a different ball game. But if it's general, it depends what the contract says, to be
mm,
perfectly honest. Everybody's will be different. Every single org will have a different contract. For us, it was very much a warning, fine, dismissal kind of policy. So like a 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing, depending on the nature of what it is that happened. So yeah, it varies from player to player, from contract to contract, from org to org. So yeah, that's how it works for us. Really, is kind of a warning, fine, dismissal kind of system. We've only ever had to. I think we've only dismissed a player once for anything like um, for certain things that they did, rather than just we're making a roster change or
mm.
whatever. So and all of our contracts have like a notice period, so we have to give them X amount of days notice if we want to change the roster or whatever. So yeah, just read your contracts, I would say, and make sure that you've got a deal that means you can't just be sacked on the
Mm.
day immediately, because you were a bit annoying that day or whatever. So yeah.
Um, Chat, there were a couple of people who said they wanted to ask questions, and you may have asked them, but they've been lost in a lot of chat that's happened. So if you have questions that you'd like to put to Jeff, please drop them in chat now, and I'll keep an eye and make sure we asked. Hello, Pyro, good to see you. So how long has Resolve been an org, Jeff?
Uh, Good question. Well, I started in esports in 2016. Resolve wasn't a thing then, so I managed Barrage for many years, and then I only joined Resolve like 2.5 years ago now,
Okay.
and it had been around in a competitive nature since 2021. So that's when they first had competitive teams, but before that they did have a presence, but it was mainly like around coaching and a Discord community effectively before that. So yeah, so been around for a fair few years, but esports wise since 2021.
Okay. So, first question from chat is from Rumble Truck, and he's interested in your take on the idea of RL esports being more of a nation based format. So more events around countries competing. Would that be helpful to the scene? Um, or is it going to be more like kind of football and so on, where the it's around the clubs?
Yeah, I think there is a place for each of them. We saw the FIFA World Cup. I think that was, totally an unbiased opinion, obviously. Um, I think that was really good. I think we've been kind of crying out as a community for events like that for a little while. I think the it was. I think it was a great event, and I think it showed something different. I think we got to see France finally put the kind of French super team together. We got to see, the best players from each country, for that event. And whether we see that every year, I'm not sure. Or whether we even should see that every year or every other year or something like that. But I think it was a really cool event, and I would
Mm-hmm.
like to see more of that. Totally selfishly, I'd love to be part of that again as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it does help. Um, bring us to a new audience as well. Having that FIFA back in that FIFA name as part of the Rocket League event is very cool. There was
Mm.
a lot of people that I met there from a more traditional sports background that are kind of seeing esports for the first time because it's got a traditional sports name next to it. So I think it's really good. Hopefully we'll see more of that. Hopefully we'll see the Olympic esports games have been announced for 2027, so hopefully we'll see Rocket League as part of that as well. um, yeah, I think it'll be really cool.
As I understand, the org that was approached locally to kind of manage the FIFA side of things, they mentioned that I think they have a deal for to manage. They said to manage this for the next couple of years. So I understand that it's going to be an every year thing, and I just hope it's. Because because FIFA has relationships with country football management, they wanted
Yeah,
it kind of run through that, and because they have no idea what esports is, it landed up being a bit of a shit show with how it was kind of put together and run and so on. And I'm just hoping that end of it will be smoothed out and done with a lot more time, so that we can build hype going on to, because I believe that is the one area Rocket League lacks broad outreach. Once you're in Rocket League, however you manage to fall into the ecosystem, it's a fairly closed ecosystem. We don't do a lot to find new recruits, new members, new people into the game, and the FIFA is the ideal way to do it, because you do it through football, which has such a huge following. And if the South African Football Association were to really hype up Rocket League, it would explode Rocket League in this region. So
yeah,
I'm crossing fingers for someone like that. And then,
yeah, for sure.
sorry,
I,
go
I
on.
I think I just want to no, I just want to touch on something a little bit there. So like, I think certain nations did it better than others.
Yes.
I think it was obviously left up to the football associations. I can only speak for sort of like England. Really, they contacted me fairly early and had me involved in the process from a fairly early stage. All our sort of announcement video and stuff was filmed at Wembley Stadium and
Mm,
stuff like that. And the
that's
official
proper.
England, the official England like Twitter like posted the video and everything. So yeah, I think it's really cool. I mean, I've got so much England merch and stuff now that I don't know what to do with it all. It doesn't all fit in my wardrobe. So yeah, I think if the football associations get it right earlier, I think that we'll see that event continue to do
Mm.
better.
Well, here's hoping that that's one of the cool things that happen as the 10th anniversary
Yeah.
rolls out. And then a much smaller question, but one I've seen you weigh in on, and you kind of touched on it a little
Mm.
bit at the beginning while talking about the decals and all of that. Is
Mm.
we've seen a player signed to an org using the decal of an opposing of a different org. It's like,
Yeah.
what is even going on here? And I don't understand. To me, with the use of backers mod, it's like the easiest thing in the world to just dress every player on your team in the decal. So,
Yeah.
so you might as well bring your Twitter thoughts onto the podcast.
I hate so right. For starters, if you're representing an org, there's no way you should be representing another org in game. Whether that be for me, whether that be on your own live stream, or whether that be in a tournament match, you shouldn't be wearing another team's colours. I don't know whether that's the football fan in me as well. That's
Mm,
crossing over there. But if you, I don't mind if you're not going to wear the decal. Your team's decal, but don't wear another team's decal. That's just, I don't know, that's just it's just poor. I don't like it. Um that being said, like I know that I know that particular team didn't, and this is no pop at Nas, lovely lad. Um I know that they don't have a decal right now, I don't think. So I don't know how much of that played into it. So yeah, don't wear another team's decal for me. I know that Arnold talked about this from Gen G a little while back as well, and he had it as a kind of firm rule for their players. Um, but yeah, you shouldn't be wearing the other team's colours for me personally. If they could do it in game, in the tournament lobby, if they could make it so that, the team all had decals on for the broadcast, that would be amazing. That would be my personal preference. But yeah.
I've just never understood. And look, I from my early days, from the very first time I got involved in sort of casting and whatever, I've been amazed. And I just don't understand it, like the general pandering to the superstitions and weirdnesses of pro players. Like even when I'd run tournaments and they're like, oh, we don't want to play on this map. It has to be DFH Stadium, we won't. And I'm like, this. How are we pandering to this? This is the setup. You're in my org. You wear the decal. Get on with it. And I don't know. It's just it's a little bit anathema to me.
Yeah, I think player placebo is a headache for every team in the world. It is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard half the time. Even when we involved the players in the sort of like design process for the decal, it still wasn't it still didn't get worn every game. So it's hard work. Players like the way that they want to do things and they think it affects them in game, and where do you draw the line on saying competition, and I guess them feeling comfortable versus a ridiculous placebo, and actually you need to promote the org. So I think I talked about this as well, because of the change in the model as well. Teams don't directly earn revenue from sales of the decal now, so because of that, there might be less pressure from orgs to players to wear their team's decal, because they're not going to see the immediate effects of that. They might see it in next season's license fee, but they're not going to see it immediately like they would in previous seasons. So, yeah, it's slightly different now.
I see. Deke just said what? I don't know what he's saying. What to? Is that something that Jeff just said? You want him to? Oh, they don't give orgs money for decals.
Yeah. So yeah, they do give orgs money for decals. I talked about this briefly before, but the model has changed. So whereas previously it was a revenue share model, Epic took 70% of the sales, and the orgs got 30%. The orgs took 30%, and now they pay the orgs a set fee at the start of the season, or whenever they agree it, and that's the fee they get regardless how many sales there are. So the sales go directly to Epic, but Epic have already paid a license fee to the team directly for having their decal in the store. So for some orgs that will be better, for some orgs that will be worse. Yeah, I don't know the exact figures that orgs have been offered. It varies from team to team, but that's how it's changed now. So yeah.
Alrighty. Are there? If there's any other questions for Jeff, you're running out of time, because we're coming to the end, of this. So for you, Jeff, when are we likely to see another Resolve Rocket League team? And just as an aside, what if you came and picked up an SSA roster? That just came to mind. I'm like, we'll be far less trouble for you.
Well, so we bizarrely in the off season, we had a bunch of different offers from teams approaching us, both from SSA, from APAC, from OS even. And the reason that I don't want to do that is because we're pretty hands-on as an org. We every team that we've had them at boot camp with us, at the facility, and we kind of want to be able to continue to do that, to be hands-on, and to be able to give the team the support that they need. If I picked up a team in SSA or North America or APAC, I wouldn't be able to have that same impact on the team. So that's the main reason that we haven't gone down that route. And also because we don't have the same accessibility for content and all that sort of stuff as well. But I want to come back to Rocket League as soon as possible. There just needs to be some more changes, I think, for for it to be commercially viable for orgs. so that it isn't just a money pit. Esports is a bit of a money pit on its own anyway.
Mm.
So certainly some of the changes don't help with that, especially when you look at what other esports titles and the publishers are doing to support teams in certain other games. Um, I think it needs to have some more changes yet
Mm.
for us to come back in the immediacy. And also we've got our own stuff going on as well. We're currently in investment discussions and stuff. So hopefully once that's all leveled off and resolved, pardon the pun, we'll be able to talk about it, with a bit more focus, I guess.
Then question from Datha: would Resolve ever get involved in grassroots collegiate Rocket League locally? And I'm assuming it's not local for me, local for you, Jeff.
Yeah. So we actually have done a little bit before. We did a little bit. We've had a couple of like open sessions up in Sunderland when the team were boot camping up there. The previous season, we were partnered with the University of Warwick over here, so they got a certain amount of coaching sessions with Tadpole and like some scrim time, and we also played them. Here and there, and also we did a little bit with another college in the UK as well. So we do little bits and pieces. It's just is balancing that time versus reward. In order to do that, I think we do want to do more local stuff and get more people involved locally. It's just where we do that. Yeah.
Well, Daps from Genesis says you guys have got it. You got to stay in here because you got, what does he say? The decals are always one of the best. So, well, there you go. There's a reason we like your decals. To hell with it, it doesn't make you any money.
Yeah. I think I've shared somewhere on Twitter how little we earned from decals last season. It's a pitiful number. So yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. But yeah, no, appreciated.
All right, great, Jeff. Well, I think we've covered all the main things, and I do believe this is, esports globally is what, 20, how old can we say it is? 20 years old? I mean, it doesn't have, it's not maybe 25 if you're stretching the definition of what esports is, maybe 25 years. But so globally, it's still a newish industry. Rocket League within that is even newer and still has maturing to do. And then SSA is like, we're a niche within a niche within a niche that still has a lot of experience to gain and growing up to do and experience to get. And for me, all of this is part of that. I think when was it 4 years ago now when we first were included in RLCS, there was a lot of enthusiasm. It's like, wow, we're now part of the global scene. We were very excited, and it was literally a bunch of kids who just signed up and played, and there was so much enthusiasm for it. But now we've come away, we've learned lessons, we are learning lessons, and all of these things, like the situation that's happened and similar, we gain experience from this, and players like Guns will take their own lessons from it and come back better. Cosmicos and Org will take lessons from this and come back better and stronger, and Cosmico is a growing org, and they been around a few years, but came from sort of humble beginnings and looking to be better and to grow. And this is all part of the pain of experience, because a lot of experience is pain, and once you've experienced pain, you learn to mitigate that pain and do it better going forward. So I hope, certainly from my perspective, I've found this quite enlightening, and I hope those who have been here and part of the conversation have taken something from it and learned from it. And Jeff, once again, I really do appreciate you taking time. I mean, you're not even in Rocket League right now, but the fact that you were willing to come on and share your experiences is awesome, and I think speaks to your ethos as an org, and I really do appreciate you taking the time. And I know there was negotiations with the missus, so with that in mind, again, thank you. I really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you, mate. Always appreciate. It's always good to speak to you as well. I know how passionate you are for SSA Rocket League and about the scene generally. So yeah, no, appreciate you having me on, and always happy to talk Rocket League. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, I have no doubt we'll get you on again, hopefully not in like 2 years' time, but hopefully the next time we'll talk about all the awesome things that have happened over the last year or 2 years, and how far we've come since the dark days of 2025. But that remains to be seen. All right, Jeff, thank you so much.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, man. Alrighty, so there we go, Jeff from Resolve. That was a really, really good conversation, and I'm so thrilled it was there, and I hope we'll take something from this. That there are those who are running orgs, who've started orgs, who are growing orgs. That I think there's something to take from that, and then players. My passions extend to orgs. It also extends to players. I want us all to win. I want us all to succeed as we go forward in this crazy journey of esport and in Rocket League. And hopefully we take the best of the lessons from all of this. So let's start bringing this to a wrap up. We've spoken about the rosters and the fact that this weekend is the last regional of Split 1. There will be no Rocket League for 6 long weeks after Sunday. So the question then becomes, well, what are Rocket League players supposed to do? Well, there is the VS Gaming Minor number 1, which is the second of 7 VS tournaments that are going to be held between now and August to determine the top 8 players, top 8 teams that will go and play the final at LAN at Comic-Con. And being a minor, there are more points at stake in this tournament than were for the cups. There are 4 cups. There are a small number of points available there. The minors carry big points, and there's one major that carries the highest number of points. So in order to sign up, if you, there is a command available in chat. If you go exclamation VS, it will take you to the link to go and sign up for the VS Gaming Minor number 1. You will also find this link in my Discord. And also, if you do exclamation Cal, we have the entire 2025 Rocket League calendar. So if you click to that, it's a Google Calendar, so you can add it to your own calendar so you get notified of when signups open, when signups close, when tournaments are underway, where it's being streamed, all the information about competitive Rocket League and Rocket League events throughout the year. Hello, Bromeo. Does that mean they turned your lights back on? Good to see you. So go and sign up. The signups for the VS... I should actually be on the, I guess the VS page. There it is on Facet. Signups for the minor number 1 close on the 5th of March. So that is Wednesday next week. So you have 9 days to get your team signed up. So go and get signed up. And this is SSA only, of course. And speaking of the calendar, if we go and have a quick look at that, we will see that the minor number 2 starts. There's a group stage, and that starts on the 8th of March. So that is, what is the date today? That's going to be the 3rd, 10th. So that is Saturday. A week from this coming Saturday will be the group stage of the VS Gaming Minor. So it all gets underway very, very shortly. So with the end of RLCS, the first split, immediately VS Gaming starts. So do go and get signed up. And what is next? Creators. I am going to feature from next week featured creators, Rocket League creators, content creators in SSA. So if you are a creator, if you know a creator, and that can be YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Insta, wherever. If there are SSA creators, I want to promote them. Get me their links, get me their info so we can have featured content creators at the end of this podcast every single week. And Kexi, I beg to differ. Daps streams occasionally. That's about as good a content creator as Daps is. So yeah, get me those links, please. And not just pros, anybody who's doing Rocket League content, I'd like to get that information. Asseblief. And then 1v1s. Last week we had a banger of a series between Tishao and Ravi. It went to 0 seconds of game 5. Ravi won that series literally with a 0-second goal in game 5. Banger series. Thanks to both of them for participating. And we're going to do it again this Wednesday. 1v1 show matches. 1,000 Rand prize pool brought to us by Virtuoso, who donated for the prize pool this coming Wednesday. 6:30 right here on this channel. And then finally, we come to the birthdays. I'm going to need to be there for that. Surprisingly few direct SSA birthdays this week, but the notable birthdays in the past week are, first on the 19th, Cookser turned 28. Cookser, of course, who invented the Cookser pinch out of Italy. So I don't know where he is these days or what he is doing. So happy birthday to Cookser. And the next birthday that we had in this past week was... Oh, now it's not even working. Oh, we're doing well here. We're doing really, really well. There we go. Bass from the past, caster out of North America. He turned 26 on the 19th, and then on the 20th, Tavish also turned 26. Tavish out of the Netherlands, involved in RSC, has been in and around the SSA scene, kind of, sort of, but I thought I'd throw him in there. T-Bates, who is live on First Touch right now. We'll go and raid them, go and say happy 26th birthday to T-Bates. And then Corelli, former caster for RLCS, he turned 30 on the 24th. That is today. And that will bring us to the end of Just Saying, episode 23. I will be live again on Friday for the GSL bracket, for the craziness that is going to be the GSL bracket. And then, of course, the main broadcast on ACGL Saturday and Sunday to crown the champion of the final regional for SSA Birmingham Major. And hopefully, load shedding will be a thing of the past this time next week so that we can get Sean, Bromeo, and everybody else back. And hopefully we'll have Skill Steel here as well. So until then, chaps, peace!